Now we're going to go backwards, and I'm going to give you the graph, and you're going to write the equation of a hyperbola. So first thing to do is to find the center. Center for this one is right at 0, 0. A is going to be the distance from the center to a vertex. So here's my vertex right here, so you need to count over how far that goes, so that's 4. So A is equal to 4. Remember that was under the X, it's going left and right. B is how far up and down you go to get to that box. So I would have to actually give you that box in order for you to see that. So to see how tall that is there, you would count up 5. So that's 5 there. So B is equal to 5, and again, that's the Y. That went up and down. So we can actually write our equation from this. So we have, so far, X. I know that X is first. X is first because it opens like this. If it would have been up and down, Y would be first. So I've got X plus 0 squared minus Y plus 0 squared, and notice I'm just leaving the denominators alone for now, equals 1. So I always want these to equal 1. So again, X went left and right 4, so this would be 4 squared here. A squared is 16, so that would be the 16 because it goes left and right 4. It went up and down 5, so 5 times 5 is 25. And there's our equation. Notice I gave you the foci in this picture, but we didn't even have to use them. That's just there. Let's try another one. This one's been shifted. So notice the center is right here at 3, -1. Another note, be careful because sometimes these go by half, so really look at the numbers that are given. Center's at 3, 1. This is opening up and down like this, so that means that Y has to be first. So my Y value is going to have to be first. And if I count how far up and down this goes to the vertex right there, it went up 1, 2, 3, 4. It went up 4, so A is 4. So if you want to, A squared will be 16. B is how far left and right this went. So to that box, it's kind of hard to see, but it went over 2. So B is 2, which means B squared is 4, just so I have that there. And let's write the equation. Again, let me just, the B went left and right, so that's going to go under the X. The 4 we got by going up and down, so that was under the Y. When I write this equation, remember I have to do the Y first. You're really going to be tempted to do X first. So I've got Y minus -1 squared, which you can just change that to a plus, Y plus 1 squared, well, I'll come back to that in a minute, minus X minus 3 squared over something equals 1. Then come back up here. The 4 we got by going up and down. 4 times 4 is 16. That's my A squared there. And then B squared went left and right to get 2. So there's my 4. So there's the equation for this. Again, just be careful when it's going up and down because you're going to be tempted to do the X first. All right, let's try example 3. I'm going to give you some information and you need to write the equation. This might be one where I would suggest you sketch a graph of these to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to just sketch a graph on here. It's probably not going to be very pretty, but we'll do our best. I'm telling you the vertices are at 0 and then plus minus 6. So if I just sketch this out here, I go over 0 up 6 for one of them, and I go over 0 down 6 for the other vertice. I know then, that since those are the vertices, that this is going to open up and down. So I know that this is going to have to be a y squared minus an x squared problem. I need the center. The center is going to be in between those vertices. So this one's pretty easy. You can just look at it and see that it's at 0, 0. But if not, what you could do is you could, remember this was at 0, 6, and this was at 0, -6. You could do the midpoint formula. Add the x's, divide by 2, add the y's, divide by 2, which of course is just going to give you 0, 0. So if you really wanted to, you could start your equation right now. I know that this is going to be y plus 0 squared over something minus x plus 0 squared over something else equals 1. So now I just need to figure out how far up and down it went and how far left and right it went. Well, I gave you one of them. You actually can look here and see that from the center to a vertex, I went up 6. So that means that a is equal to 6. So a squared is 36. So I'm going to go ahead and just put that under here right now. I only need one more number. I'm going to get that one by figuring out how far left and right I went. At this point, I have no clue. So look and see what else I gave you. I gave you the foci. I gave you it in a radical form, so I would right away change that to a decimal, which is about 7.2. So I know from the center it went up 7.2 and down 7.2. Remember, that's c. c is equal to 7.2 or 2 radical 13. So c squared is going to equal 2 radical 13, all of it squared. Make sure you put parentheses around that. When you square that, you get that c squared is 52. So I know a squared and I know c squared. From those two, I can get my b squared. So since we're doing hyperbolas and that's a minus sign, I'm going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I know a squared is 36. I don't know b squared, but I know c squared is 52. So subtract 36 from both sides, and I get that b squared is equal to 16. And I'm going to stop there because that's the number I'm looking for right there. If I wanted b, I would square root it, but I just want to know b squared is 16, so I'm just going to put that number right there. And this one is done. All right. The next one's a little bit trickier because it's not centered at the origin. And you don't know that yet, but we'll see that pretty quickly here. So again, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to sketch this graph. So this one right here, I've got a vertex at 5, 2. So I'm going to go over 5, up 2, right there. And it's back 1, up 2. So what this is telling me is that this is going to open left and right. Since it's going to open left and right, it's going to be an x squared minus y squared this time. I need the center. To find the center is going to be in the middle of my vertices. So I'm going to do my midpoint formula. And that's one that I'm not going to give you. You need to memorize that one. It should be pretty easy. Add the x's and divide by 2. 5 plus negative 1 divided by 2. Add your y values and divide by 2. So 5 plus negative 1 is 4. 4 over 2 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4 over 2 is another 2. Lots of 2's. So the center is at 2, 2. If you were careful on graph, on a piece of graph paper, you probably could just count and find where that was. All right. I can actually do most of my equation right now. So I know that I have, it was x squared first. So I'm going to do x minus my x value, which is a 2 squared. I don't know what that's over. Minus y minus another 2, because that's a 2, squared, and this is going to equal 1. I know that it went, or I can figure out how far left and right it went. So if the center was at 2, so if this was 2, 2, and I was trying to get to, let's say, 5, 2. From 2 to 5 is 3. So I know that I went over 3 both ways. You could get that just by counting, or you could say that it's 6 between the 5 and the negative 1, so half of 6 is 3. You could do this, 5 minus negative 1 is equal to 6. Divide that by 2, and that's 3. A couple different ways you can get that. So that transverse axis was 6, that major axis. All right, so anyway, so a is equal to 3, so a squared is 9. Again, I did not give you how far up and down, so what you're going to have to do on this one is you're going to have to use those foci that I gave you. So This time I gave you these foci. So let's see, this one was over at 7, 2, and this was at negative 3, 2. So that means from the center to C, or from the center to a focus, was actually 5. And again, you could get that by counting on the graph, or find the distance between the numbers that are different. So 7, the distance between 7 and negative 3, it's usually absolute value there, is 10. So this whole axis here is 10. Half of that would be 5. Off the page. C is equal to 5, which means C squared is 25. I don't really need C squared, I need B squared, so I'm going to do that. A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. We knew that A squared here was 9. I don't know B squared, but I know C squared is 25, which gives me B squared is 16, which I can now put that number into my formula right there. And we are done. All right, one more problem. Stick with me, guys. Now we got a word problem.